Hello, welcome back to UK Election Analysis. In this video we're going to be talking about the Green Party and how they might achieve a second seat or any other gains they might win in the next election. Particularly we're going to be looking at the seat of Bristol West, which is the most realistic seat that they could win in the next election, but we will be looking at some other seats. But first let's have a look at Bristol West. Bristol West is the most left-wing seat in Bristol. It's a seat currently held by Labour. It's been held by the Liberal Democrats not long ago. It's not a party with particularly. It's not a seat with particularly any loyalty to Labour, but it's in this article described as a seat with that sounds quite hippy dippy, for the want of a better phrase. Handmade pottery, vegan supplies, this sort of house painting. And it's, even though this article is written about how Bristol West could go to the Greens in 2017, I think it's still relevant because it gives you the general vibe around that seat from the New Statesman outlet. Now, this is a bit out of date. Thangham Debonair doesn't have a majority of 5,673. It's far greater now. And at the moment, the likely contender for the Green Party wouldn't be Molly Scott-Cato, who ran for Stroud in the last election in 2019, but she did run in Bristol West in 2015 and 2017. At the moment, it's likely that it would be Carla Denyer, who's the current co-leader of the Green Party, and she's a councillor in the area, councillor for Clifton something. And having a high-profile Green candidate's definitely a benefit to the Green Party in this seat. Now, Bristol West is in Bristol, and although it went to the Labour Party in the last election, there's a lot of left-wing infrastructure, not necessarily for Labour, but for any left-wing party or movement that could possibly operate in the seat. And there's definitely a probability that the Green Party could use a lot of this. A lot of young people that are keen to campaign and vote. A lot of young people that perhaps wouldn't have traditionally voted, but voted in the last elections because they were motivated and made up Jeremy Corbyn's key base in Labour. And now that Jeremy Corbyn's out of the Labour Party and Keir Starmer's in, they might be less inclined to vote Labour, but still politicised and wanting to operate for parties like the Green Party. If we look at the last council election in Bristol in 2021, so with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister and all COVID in that, we can see that the Green Party actually did better than Labour in Bristol. In the entirety of Bristol, they got the same amount of seats and the Green Party got slightly more votes, the best vote share in the city. But if you actually look at the seat of Bristol West, they got twice the votes that Labour did. If you look at in the seats, the council wards in Bristol West, they got twice the votes of Labour. There's definitely enough willingness for Greens to win that seat, and that could be really an indicator that Carla Denyer could win this seat. Also, if we look at the West of England mayoral race, Green Party came second, 28.1%, not far behind Labour in the Bristol particular area, not in the whole seat, but in this Bristol area, Green came second, and I can guarantee you in this area of Bristol West, they probably came first. To come that close to Labour in the city as a whole. Bristol West, you can see there, Green came second in the last election to Carla Denyer, and coming second is extremely important. That means that on their campaign leaflets and flyers, they can say, this isn't an election where the Conservatives can win. They're not going to win in Bristol West. We know they're not going to win in Bristol West. It's between Labour or Green. It's between. There's no way that a right-wing party could win. It's going to be Labour or Green. And they came second closer in 2015. That's probably more because the Liberal Democrat split vote. They actually got more votes in 2019. But if we look at the actual MP for Bristol West, the Labour MP Thangham Debonair, the tradition of Labour she's in is she's towards that moderately right, more sympathetic with ideas of, say, Tony Blair than Jeremy Corbyn. And at the moment, I would say the Green Party's the most left-wing party with seats in Parliament. Definitely, I'm not sure about Northern Ireland, forget about them. But with seats from England, Wales and Scotland, Green Party's probably the second largest seat. The most left-wing party ever since Labour's moved towards the centre perhaps, or away from the more radical ideas of Jeremy Corbyn. And in a seat like Bristol West, if we look at the constituency profile of Bristol West, young voters, metropolitan voters, these are key left-wing voters that Labour and Thangham Debonair, Keir Starmer, they probably aren't going to excite and motivate, and they could really definitely go to the Green Party. This, in fact, is one of the most Remain constituencies in the country. Young vote, 38's the average voter age. That's more than 10 less than the average in the country. Wealthier, probably more graduates. We can see here the area of Bristol West. In central Bristol, Greens could definitely look to take a seat like this. And in fact, the Greens at the moment have been doing a lot better. They're gaining off the back of, like I said, people leaving the Labour Party, probably because they were politicised by Jeremy Corbyn and that more left-wing ideas, nationalisation, higher taxes, things like that, that excited younger voters, students, voters like that, and now perhaps are leaving the Labour Party and want to find a new home in a party like the Green Party that has traditionally excited those same younger voters, has been more hardline towards supporting, I think, ideas like nationalisation, higher taxes, more radical economic and social ideas. Definitely on the environment, obviously, which is the number one issue for young people. They are the Green Party, and young people have made it the base of voters of parties, Green parties in Europe that have done quite well. If you look at the German Green Party, they're now in coalition with the SDP and the other party, I can't remember what it's called, in Germany. Green Party's doing well in Scotland, they're in coalition or some sort of agreement with the SNP, and they're in government there. First time they've ever been in government anywhere in the UK. And they're definitely growing, and as they grow, Bristol West will be a seat that they could definitely look to take. In fact, I would say there's more likely that they will take it than Labour will in the next election. Another seat I thought was worth a look is Dulwich and West Norwood. This was the only other seat where Green came second. But that's really, really important. They didn't come second like the same margin that they did in Bristol West, but coming second in a seat says that the Conservatives don't have a chance here. People that vote Labour just because they don't want the Conservatives in don't need to worry anymore. They can vote Labour or Green, and even if they vote Green, the worst that can happen really, if you're a Green voter, is that Labour will get in. So they're not so worried that a Conservative could get in. Although this isn't a seat where the Liberal Democrats did well, not the Liberal Democrats, the Green Party did well really that much before. If you look at 2015, which they did well as well as they did in 2019, they didn't do so great in 2017. They came second in a lot of seats, but they didn't come second in Dulwich and West Norwood. They came second in seats like Norwich South, but they've really declined there. But they've came second here, they're growing here. This is the sort of seat that they would like to take, to show that they can take seats off Labour in central London. This is really an area where they should be strong, and they can be strong, and if there's enough willingness to vote for them, that they can get in. And like I said, people aren't going to be as scared of the Conservatives getting in. Another seat that's perhaps less traditional, you might think, traditionally young, progressive, is Isle of Wight. This is a seat that they did alright in 2015, I think. A seat that the Liberal Democrats have held, and in 2019 they got almost a quarter of the vote. Oh no, that's the wrong seat. I was going to say, I thought that was a bit high. 2019 they got 15% of the vote, so that's still quite high. Conservatives came first, but if they can consolidate that Labour vote, perhaps win votes from Conservatives, so I think that Green Party can win some votes in some areas from the Conservatives that the Labour Party can't win. Perhaps if you think about Conservative people who care about nature, who perhaps live in the countryside, the Greens making headway with these sorts of voters. I also was thinking about, there's a lot of areas, say, trying to think, like areas where there's erosion, rivers, flooding, subject to natural disaster, rural areas that traditionally vote Conservative. But if you think if there's rivers flooding around you, you're going to really care more about the environment and climate change, and they might be inclined to go to the Green Party. If there's a constituency near a floodplain that's regularly flooding, they might be more inclined to go to the Green Party. If you look at the Forest of Dean, the Green Party picked up council seats, although that's not particularly floody area. Actually there are parts, but there's council seats that the Green Party picked up and held that the Labour Party never could have. But this seat in general is very different from a seat like Bristol West. Voted to leave 62%, that's quite high. Older voters, but also it's an area that's quite disenfranchised from the bubble of Westminster, and that might do well for the Greens, who sort of, they did an advert for, I remember, for the 2015 election, I think, where it was a joke about all the main parties basically all being the same on a lot of issues, and that the Green parties were different, and that might go down well in a seat like this, seem different from the other parties. The fact that somewhere voted high leave shows that they usually have less trust in the establishments and in what's seen as that elite of areas like London and Brussels, and that might work well in Green's favour. There's the Isle of Wight. There's also Bury St Edmunds, which the Greens did well in the last election. They seem to do really well in the last election here, which is surprising. They just surged in this seat without really expectation. They did all right in 2015, but they still came fourth. But making it to that third place, I think that's a lot to do with the Liberal Democrats standing down. If you didn't like the Conservatives or Labour Party, they were the other party to vote for in Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk. They also had this famous candidate called Helen Geek from Time Team, and that might have gone down well as well. Why would you want these people that seem so unfamiliar, so distant, when you've got Helen Geek from Time Team running for the Green parties, a kind local party, kind local candidate, and they did well off that. And if they can bring in that Labour vote to become the second party with a strong second place, and then they can work to bring off the Conservative voters, perhaps win some of those voters, like I said, that Labour can't really win. And in an election where the Greens are popular, Conservatives aren't very popular, like the next election where the Conservatives aren't doing particularly well, more climate consciousness, they could definitely look to take a seat like this. I think it would take a lot of planning. It probably won't happen in the next election, a lot of these seats. But the next election will be a crucial chance for the Green Party to get into positions where they can take these seats. Another one I picked was Stroud, just because they got 7.5. This is where Molly Cato-Scott ran in the last election, which shows that the Greens are interested in this seat. This is slightly different. This is a marginal constituency between Labour and the Conservatives. The Green are actually in power in the council with the Labour Party at the moment in this seat, so they could gain some popularity and local characters there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video on the Greens, and hope you like and subscribe to my channel and like the video.